Welcome to this edition of Under the Radar for Saturday, February 25th. And let's just dive right into some cultural suicide here in good old Australia. Muslim public school boys excused from shaking hands with women. A public school in Sydney's West has adopted a policy of permitting Muslim male students to decline to shake hands with females, despite the practice having been denounced by many senior Islamic figures. The Hurstville Boys campus of Georges River College in Sydney recently hosted an awards ceremony at which female presenters, including several accomplished and respected members of the local community, were told by one of the school's two principals that some students would not shake their hands because of their Muslim faith. Because that's not sexist. The New South Wales Education Department has confirmed the school had an agreed protocol regarding handshaking and Muslim students. It was developed following consultation between staff, students and parents. At the school's 2016 presentation day, the principal explained to invited guests making awards that some Muslim students may place their hand across their chest instead of shaking hands. The Education Department defended the school's actions. The Department of Education requires its schools to recognise and respect the cultural, linguistic and religious backgrounds of all students with the intent to promote an open and tolerant attitude towards a diverse Australian community. Don't you love it when government officials lecture us on the virtues of being tolerant of intolerance? But you can see the moral quandary here for the identitarians. This must be very confusing for them. Who's more oppressed? Is it the women's or the Muslims? Oh, Jesus! Now, one positive is that some senior spokespeople in the Islamic community are not supportive of this. Such literal adherence to the hadith in a government school setting has surprised many in the Muslim community, given that many specialist Islamic schools do not have policies that deal with handshaking between the sexes. So Islamic schools don't even have these protocols, yet our government-funded public schools are adopting it. Aren't we progressive? Australia's Grand Mufti Ibrahim Abu Muhammad is known to shake hands with women, as did his predecessor, and both are understood to consider the particular hadith to be open to interpretation. Well, isn't that convenient? Kaysar Trad, president of the Australian Federation of Islamic Councils, said many Muslim scholars had come to interpret the hadith to be a reference to unwelcome harassment that should not be extended to a friendly greeting such as a handshake. That hadith is not clear, but it is not a prohibition, Mr. Trad said. So on that basis, I'm not going to offend a woman if they offer their hand by not shaking it. Former Islamic Council of Victoria Secretary Kuranda Sayed said, a lot of young students do take it a bit serious. They want to live by the standard they have been taught. Well, there's your problem. Who's teaching them that? Mr. Sayed said some Muslim men were known to place their hand on their heart to send a signal that they did not want to shake hands, but a majority of Muslims were comfortable shaking hands with the opposite sex. But no, it shouldn't apply in a school context, he said. Students should be able to shake hands with the teacher or the principal, or receive a greeting from a visitor to the school. Some people take it too seriously. So that's at least somewhat reassuring, but if many Islamic community leaders are saying this shouldn't apply in schools, where, as Corinda Sayed claimed, are they being taught this, and why? So let's have a look at what that specific hadith says. The Messenger of Allah said, if one of you were to be struck in the head with an iron needle, it would be better for him than if he were to touch a woman he is not allowed to. And then it goes on to say, there is no doubt that for a man to touch a non-mahram woman is one of the causes of fitna, turmoil, temptation, provocation of desire, and committing haram deeds. So as the author of this article on Quadrant, Peter O'Brien, noted, so it is clear this is not about women being unclean, but rather the inability of Muslim men to control their baser urges. Surely Muslim men, sensible ones at any rate, should feel outraged at this slight. Well, exactly. The implication is that men are such animals they can't control themselves, and just the touch of a woman's hand will send them into a rape frenzy. And on top of that, this is just another example of a religion carving out special treatment for itself, and by doing so is one more piece of evidence of Islam's inability to adapt to modernity. But that's what happens when you prioritise identity politics over basic values like treating men and women equally. I think Peter Credlin made some good points on Paul Murray Live this week.
I have been in situations in Australia as a Prime Minister's Chief of Staff where men would not shake my hand. They would do this one, right? Mm-hmm. I find that offensive. I find that offensive in my country, and they did that one, I still put my hand out, and I would leave my hand out there until they were ashamed to shake my hand, or they would walk away. I don't think that is on. Now, you've got a secular school system in New South Wales. I want the Labor Party to say this is not on. I want Coalition to say it's not on. I want Mark Scott, formerly the ABC, now the Director General of Education in New South Wales, to say this is not on. And God forbid a woman teacher happens to give you that prize. I think it is with integrity and dignity that you would shake her hand. I don't think this should be allowed in our schools at all. I don't think most Muslim families would want this endorsed.
No, I agree with you. I don't think most of them would either.
Yes, he's a 14-year-old kid, but I have to say, most of the radicalisation happens with young teenage men, and this is the sort of stuff, once you let that run rampant, they lose respect for society, and I think it's not on at all.
Exactly. This is what encourages an attitude of us versus them, and for some, it'll be one small step down the road to radicalisation. Now here's Rowan Dean on the same program taking a leftist politician to task for completely whitewashing this issue.
Every time there's a problem with anything to do with Islam, it's a cultural thing. Oh, it's not really, Muslims don't really have a problem with women. Oh, no. There's nothing in the Quran about this. Rubbish.
I never said
and
that.
You did.
No, I didn't.
Replay the tape. You said it is not in the Quran.
I'll be replaying it tomorrow
No.
if you look at my Facebook site. Anyway, go on. I never said that.
Please allow me to finish.
Oh, please don't.
The dishonesty in this debate, we allow a culture to come in which is so disrespectful of women. And rather than addressing that and saying, guys, you have a problem with women. If you want to be in Australia, if you want to be part of this culture, you better sort it out. You better fix it up. What are we doing? The complete opposite. No wonder people like Donald Trump win, and it's going to happen in this country too, because our political class, there are not, I'm sorry, there are not more important things to worry about than knowing what our country stands for and the values of this country. It is the most critical issue. And to whitewash it and say, oh, it's just some 14-year-old kid, when you know full well it's not a 14-year-old kid. It's riddled within the culture. It's a misogynistic culture, and we're allowing it to exist. And politicians like you, who should be responsible, are sitting there and whitewashing it.
Well said, but it remains to be seen if the Indoctrination Department, the Education Department, will grow a spine and put Australian values before identity politics. And our next story from Switzerland could possibly provide a blueprint for how to do that. Swiss ruling overturns Muslim pupils' handshake exemption. School had allowed two brothers to refuse to shake teachers' hands after they said touching the opposite sex was against beliefs. Religious belief is no excuse for refusing to shake a teacher's hand. Authorities in a northern Swiss region have ruled, reversing a school's decision to grant exemptions for Muslim pupils unwilling to touch the opposite sex. Parents of pupils who refused to shake a teacher's hand at schools in the northern canton of Basel Country could now face fines of up to 5,000 Swiss francs. £3,400, regional education authorities said on Wednesday. Well, I guess that's one way to do it. You can't physically force a kid to shake hands, but if it's going to cost your parents 5,000 francs every time you refuse, I'm sure mum and dad will make sure you get with the program quick smart. But this was the best part for me. The Islamic Central Council of Switzerland said Basel Country had exceeded its authority with the ruling overturning the school's decision and vowed a court battle if the measures were enforced. The ICCS said in a statement that mandating physical contact between individuals amounted to totalitarianism. Overreaction much? Now this fine might seem a little harsh. Maybe they could start out suspending students first and work up to a fine for repeat offences. I'm not sure what's the best way to go about it, but the principle should be clear, and I think the authorities have spelled that out. Explaining the ruling on Wednesday, authorities said the public interest concerning gender equality as well as integration of foreigners far outweighs that concerning the freedom of belief of students. Now, I know gender equality is a slippery subject because what normal, rational people mean when they say gender equality, i.e. treating everyone equally, is radically different to what feminists believe, which is preferential treatment for women. But I think the more important point is integration. and not the relativistic integration espoused by leftists. As Rowan Dean said, there's nothing more important than standing up for what your values are. So the message should be, yes, you're welcome in our country, but on the proviso that you accept and uphold our values. And good on the Swiss authorities for insisting on that. And now for some good news from the New South Wales Education Department. New South Wales HSC syllabus gets overhauled with more complex topics. The New South Wales High School Certificate syllabus has been given a radical overhaul for the first time in 16 years, with a renewed focus on rigour, thoroughness and depth in classic learning areas and major changes in Year 12 science and history teaching. Now, for some context for those who haven't been following this debate, Australia's educational attainment has been slipping in recent years, and many claim that's because of the dumbing down of the curriculum. You may recall in the January 28th edition of Under the Radar, I mentioned University of New South Wales quantum physics professor Michelle Simmons, who derided the feminisation of physics during this year's Australia Day address. She said that they were diluting the math in favour of social aspects. Well, now the New South Wales Education Standards Authority agrees. We think physics has been diluted. There was an emphasis in previous generations of emphasising the social context in which you studied physics. This is a return to the science of physics, or in other words, a return to common sense. The new syllabus is a move away from a social context approach to teaching that critics, particularly in science academia, argued had led to a dumbing down of subject matter. More complex topics will be introduced across the maths and science syllabuses in response to criticism that students were ill-prepared for university studies in science, engineering and maths. But this is not just being applied to the hard sciences. The English and history syllabuses have also been overhauled. In English, there will be a renewed focus on text, language, writing and vocabulary. Common module areas including journeys, discovery and belonging have been abolished. The history syllabus has been amended to incorporate an overarching narrative about the development of modern liberalism and modern democracies. Oh good, we might actually produce students that understand the importance and value of Western civilization instead of activists that seek to undermine it. So this is a good move, and it's the second such move in the last few weeks by the New South Wales Department of Education. You may recall a couple of weeks ago I reported that they had banned the teaching of gender theory. So if they could just do away with the cultural relativism, then we might have a semi-effective government department on our hands.
Dream it.
So that's going to do it for this week's Under the Radar. Don't forget, if you have any ideas for next week's edition, put them in the comments section below, and have yourself a lovely weekend. See you next time.